Attachment theory. It's sweeping its way across our lives. The problem with attachment theory isn't just that it's oversimplified, it's actually pretty sexist. In this video, I'm going to show you why this popular relationship framework is doing a lot to your relationship and not in a good way. So you've probably seen it everywhere. Instagram posts, TikTok videos, YouTube, relationship books, all talking about this idea of attachment styles. It's become kind of the go-to explanation for why we act the way that we do in relationships. The basic idea is that our early childhood experiences shape how we connect with others as adults. So it sounds kind of neat and tidy, right? Kind of psychologically kind of makes sense. A simple way to understand our complex emotional lives. But here's the thing, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. And attachment theory is, unfortunately, no exception. So let's rewind the clock back to 1958, when a British psychologist named John Bowlby first proposed this idea of attachment theory. So Bowlby's ideas didn't just appear out of thin air, they were shaped by the social climate of a post-World War II America. At the time, there was growing anxiety about women entering the workforce and how that might affect child development. Bowlby's theory emphasized the critical importance of maternal bonds played right into these societal fears. He argued that a child's emotional well-being was primarily determined by their relationship with their mother. And this idea quickly gained traction, not only in psychology circles, but in popular culture too. But here's where it gets kind of problematic. Bowlby's research wasn't really as rock solid as many people believe. In fact, a lot of his conclusions were based on observations of animal behavior, particularly the distress caused by absent mothers in various species. And it's a pretty big leap to apply these findings directly to human relationships. And a lot of critics agree. But the problems with attachment theory go beyond just oversimplification. The theory's focus on maternal care reinforces some really outdated and sexist stereotypes about women's roles in child rearing. This kind of thinking isn't just unfair to mothers, it also ignores the important role that fathers or other family members play in a child's development. That it underestimates children's ability to adapt and make sense of their world. The historical context of attachment theory reflects a broader societal narrative that places undue blame on mothers for their children's emotional issues. Unfortunately, this perspective continues to influence how we think about relationships today. So we've seen a little bit about how attachment theory has questionable roots, but let's talk about how it's being used today, because one of the biggest issues is the way that it's led to a culture of labeling people. So you've probably seen those quizzes or posts that claim to tell you if you're anxious, avoidant, or secure in your relationships, and it sounds neat and tidy, but the thing is, these labels can actually do a lot more harm than good. And I've actually done a deeper dive video into attachment theory, which I'll link to above and in the description down below. But when we start putting people into these boxes, we oversimplify the complex nature of human relationships and human beings in general. Think about it. How many times have you acted differently in different relationships? Our behavior isn't fixed, and it changes based on our experiences and our current situation and the person that we're with. But when we label ourselves or our partners, we risk creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say you take one of those online quizzes, or you go through a book and self-reflect, and it tells you that you're anxious in relationships. Because of this label, you're likely to start interpreting all of your actions through that lens. And you're going to start to second-guess yourself more, or become hyper-aware of any signs of anxiety in your behavior. And this can actually make you more anxious, reinforcing the label that you have given yourself. And the same goes for labeling your partner as well. If you decide that your partner is avoidant, or they label themselves as avoidant, your confirmation bias will start to look for signs of avoidance in everything that they do. And this leads to not only a breakdown in communication and understanding, but also perpetuates negative ideas about ourselves. You know, we're using Instagram posts to find labels for ourselves or our partners, pathologizing how we act or how they act. It's going to become a real slippery path to losing empathy and truly connecting with not only yourself, but also your partner as well. But it gets even more problematic when we start to look at how these labels often fall along gender lines. So women are frequently labeled as anxious in relationships, while men are often more seen as avoidant. And this isn't just annoying, it's reinforcing harmful stereotypes about how men and women behave in relationships. And these gendered labels can make people feel like their behavior is somehow inherent or unchangeable to their biology, rather than something that they can work on and change. And again, it also leads to a lack of empathy to our partners as well in relationships. You know, for example, instead of trying to understand why our partner might be acting a certain way, what triggers or situational issues are happening right now, we can just chalk it up to their attachment style and call it a day. But here's the question. Can these simplistic categories really capture the full complexity of human emotions and experiences? You know, our relationships are influenced by so many factors: our past experiences, our current circumstances, our cultural background, and so much more. And trying to boil all of that down into a single label seems like a bit of a stretch, to say the least. So attachment theory can lead us down a problematic path of labeling and sexist oversimplification. But what is the alternative? How can we understand our relationships without falling into these traps? Well, the key is to move beyond rigid frameworks and actually start to embrace the complexity of human connection, right? Instead of trying to fit ourselves and our partners into predetermined categories, which can cause a lot more division, we need to focus on personal agency, open communication, and the unique context of each relationship. So we can start by considering the importance of individual experiences. Each of us has a rich tapestry of life events that shape how we interact with others. And these experiences go far beyond our early childhood attachments. They include our cultural background, past relationships, personal values, life circumstances, current and past. When we recognize this complexity, we open ourselves up to a much more deeper understanding of our partners and as well as ourselves. And, you know, really think about this. Have you ever noticed how you act differently in different relationships, in different situations, in work situations with different people? You know, maybe you're more open with one friend, but guarded with another. This isn't because you have a fixed attachment style, but because relationships are dynamic and context dependent. You know, ultimately, there's a bit more of a useful framework into understanding ourselves. When we boil things down, everything that we do is filtered through our beliefs. And our beliefs can be taken from early childhood, but they're also taken from significant events that happen in our lives. So this isn't about developing some specific style that you have when you connect with your mother or not when you're younger, but, you know, going through school, going through jobs, the way that your parents spoke to you, the way that friends' parents spoke to you, the people that you met on the street, teachers that shouted at you, media that you consume, social media, all of these have a massive impact on our beliefs. And from that leads to our thoughts, that leads to our feelings, and that leads to our actions. But all of this filters down to our beliefs. And beliefs cannot be categorized into neatly packaged labels. So the more that you reverse engineer yourself, explore where your feelings come from, where your thoughts come from, and where your beliefs come from, and work your way backwards, the more that you can start to talk with your partner and start to dig deeper into understanding them, where their values, beliefs, ideas, feelings, thoughts, actions all come from. And this involves opening up communication and taking the time to listen and understand them rather than label them with this attachment style and treating them like they are one of 4 different types of people in the entire world. And seeing things in this way means that things are a lot less simple. They're a lot more complex because we have to find the nuance in the way to treat people, the way to communicate with people. But this is a good thing because this means that we actually need to take the time and the effort in order to get to know our partners rather than labeling them or pathologizing them with an attachment style or a psychological condition. Ultimately, cultivating compatibility in a relationship is not really based on 4 different attachment styles. It's based on complex human systems, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And building an understanding of the complexity of your partner is much more important than giving some sort of label to them. So if you believe in the complexity of people and you want to deeper dive into relationships, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp, where I'll dive into the main elements that impact relationships. And I'll give you the steps and tools that all of my successful members have used to build themselves a thriving relationship. If you want to join us, then click on the link in the description to grab your spot today. So this involves communicating and opening conversations. And this is something you can do today. You can actually start to open conversations with your partner about what they believe in, what their values are, how they developed this like for a movie or music. This is part of human connection. And this is what makes relationships so beautiful, is that we get to actually connect rather than simply slap a label on someone and assume that we just need to act in a certain way in order to keep them happy. Remember that the goal isn't to fit into some ideal secure attachment category. It's to build a relationship that works for both of you based on mutual understanding, respect, and growth. So by moving beyond attachment theory, we're not just avoiding its pitfalls, we're opening up ourselves to a more richer, more nuanced, less sexist, less rigid understanding of relationships. We're acknowledging that people are complex, multifaceted beings who can't be reduced to simple labels or categories. And this idea of attachment styles can become very prevalent when it comes to conflict. A lot of people try to avoid conflict and think that healthy relationships are all about avoiding having any sort of arguments or mismatching. Now, I've actually spoken a little bit deeper about this in a video which I'll link to on the screen, but a lot of people think that having no conflict in a relationship is a good thing. But actually, it's really important to have conflict. It's really important to not avoid talking about the important issues. But it's not about attachment styles. It's about learning the skills to navigate conflict in the right way in order to bring it to a good resolution. So I'll leave you with this deep dive video on that, and I'll see you over there.